Hello! Saluton, al chui. Uh, Hi. So today is Thursday. It is the 7th of November. Um, I am done with my other job for the week, so and my ASL class is not meeting tonight. So I basically have all day free, and I'm pretty excited. My husband bought me a half gallon of mango lassi, so I have that to drink, so that's good. Cora is still back here. Hello, hello. So yeah, I'm going to try to uh, maybe cover multiple topics today, and then try to make it so they're each not too long. But again, I'm still trying to work on this format, and I'm also trying to make it so I can do the least amount of editing, so I can try to make the filming process nicer, more polished, maybe? But we'll see. So, I have a few things to cover today, and then probably Saturday, I'll do a retrospective of this 1 week sprint. Friday, or I guess Thursday night, I can go pick up Death Stranding, because I pre ordered it. Really, I just pre ordered it this week. So I just went on the website. I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this. So I pre ordered it, and I didn't pay for it yet, so I thought you had to pay for pre orders, but I'll go pick that up tonight. And so I guess I'll stream that Friday, maybe with my sister. Let's see. Okay, so I'll talk about some sprint planning today. I'll just, I guess, talk about the organizational part of planning projects. I'm planning on talking about the anatomy of a video game, some more, but not viewing the code. I'm going to be drawing. I've painted my Wacom tablet pen this way so I don't lose it as easily, but I'll kind of try to illustrate more visually what I'm doing. I want to work on some more environment art just so I can finish that one map. That will just speed through it really fast. I don't really know what to say about it. I guess I could also do kind of a breakdown too if there's anything interesting to say. I'd like to get the animated character sprite for the main character and moving in 4 directions, just moving to begin with. And then, so once I have the map art, I can make the map in tiled, and then we can get to how do you load a map in a game, and the tiled map format, and all of that stuff. So that's my goal for today, and it's currently 11 o'clock, so we'll see how that goes. So let's talk about planning and making that schedule and sprint planning and stuff like that. I'll try to do my best to try to explain what I do. So I guess first, like when I've worked professionally as a software/web developer, almost every place I've worked at has at least claimed to be Scrum. Some of them have been actual Scrum, some of them have been Scrum, but so I tend to like Agile Scrum for the most part when it's done correctly. I'm not necessarily following that because I don't have a team here. But the idea behind like having Agile Scrum is like everyone, like there's not supposed to be a hierarchy. You're supposed to all have equal say in things. When you're pointing how long something will take, it will have to be a unanimous vote between the team members. But that's not really coming in here. I haven't weighted any of these tasks. I've basically just put tasks together. So I guess first is just thinking of when you're making a game, and especially if it's your game and you make decisions on what's going to be implemented, you can kind of think of what features you'll need ahead of time. Whereas like if it's a big software project, you're gonna need people who know the clients, who work with the clients to figure out what the features are. So for this one, like, I chose Venture for a reason because it's a game that already exists, and so there's a limited amount of features that makes the scope very small. So I know that, for instance, we'll need to have like keyboard movement. So we'll need to have, let's try to break this down into as fine grain as possible without being too fine grain. So there'll be a player with you know, keyboard movement or whatever. With Venture, it's top down. So let me just put that over here. Maps. It's top down, so the good thing about that is we don't have to worry about gravity. We're not making a side scroller, so that actually makes programming that very easy. Venture, like, just kind of has really thin walls as lines and a bunch of empty space. But for me, I'm going to have tiles, so I'm going to make this tiled grid-based. So that also simplifies things because I know that means I can use certain techniques for collision detection between the characters and that tile-based map. So, you know, I can know ahead of time that exactly these spots on the map are unpassable or solid or something. Whereas I could make it, and I think I could also do this with the tiled map editor as well, but I could make it like just everything is kind of freestanding wherever I want it to be. So if you think of a lot of more modern games, modern 2D games, where you can kind of freely place things, then you have to think about collision more in terms of like actually hitting the objects. Whereas with tile-based, you can kind of just be like, there's a block here. You can't go in that entire block, and kind of do some calculations ahead of time. So I know that both of these will make it a little bit easier. The easiest would be to not have any maps. And I also know that I'm not going to have any screen scrolling, so these are going to be one map per screen, or one screen per map. Okay, screen. So that's also something that's making the feature easier. I know I don't have to implement screen scrolling, so not that that's hard to do, but that almost when I do that, I have to implement like a camera system, so that's like a whole little feature unto itself. You know, so it's, you know, from experience, I know it's not that hard. I've done it before. Okay, player, we have keyboard movement. We'll have some sort of collision detection. So I'll figure that out. With collision against the environment, that can just be squares. With collision with other characters, that could just be radius based. Like, I don't really need to implement pixel perfect collision detection here. So we'll know we need collisions, the ability to detect. Did I smoke? I don't know how to spell collision. We'll need to be able to detect when the player hits an item, an enemy, and walls of the map, as well as like doors and stuff. But that'll be part of the tiles. Like, I can have warp tiles that are programmed to say, go to this map. And then the player will need to attack. So with that, I made mine a little bit more sophisticated than what Venture is. I haven't made it yet, but I was thinking of having like no attack at first, and then maybe like a close range. Like, you have to be really close to hit the thing, or having a ranged attack where you throw something. So this one right here, if you're allowing for movement in any direction, then you have to come in with some trig to figure out your velocity and angles and stuff. I'm not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple. In Venture, you can move in 8 directions, which, like, you can still use the trig, but you could just hard code the values instead. So we might do it that way. I am not going to draw the character walking in 8 directions. One, I've literally never drawn a walk cycle at a 45-degree angle. So we're gonna let you just walk in like any direction. Like, you can walk diagonally, but I'm only gonna make like north, south, west, east directions for animation. Okay, anyway, so this is also going to need its own collision. This is going to have its own collision. So there'll be some different methods. So we'll need versus the map and versus enemies. And then also possibly if the enemies end up having any ranged attacks, let's just call them like bullets. So, you know, projectiles, something like if an enemy has a magical attacks or something. So that should be pretty easy as well. I know with maps we also need the overworld map is what I'm calling it, but it's, you know, just the kind of big map of the castle, and then you go into a specific room, and we have room maps, but really the only difference is that the player dimensions and the player size, the sprite size is going to change. The rest of that logic will be pretty much the same. I know I will have enemies, and while I'm at it, let's put HUD notes. The enemies are probably going to be the most complicated part. Oh yeah, we'll also need a UI. So we'll put that down here, or maybe over here. The UI can be pretty simple. Enemies, I want to have different types of enemies, so this indicates different behaviors. So we have to think about how are we going to program in that behavioral system. So for instance, if it were like this type of enemy always follows a path and walks in a square or something like that, maybe I could pre-plan a path. Maybe I could store that as like a series of characters, like north, 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 south, 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 south. Or I could predefine a set of behaviors and have it follow that. It's up to me to design that and figure out how to implement that. But that's something, another feature that we'll have to do that's more than just kind of your bare bones. Different types, they might have close range and projectiles, which will be the same feature as for this here, so that will be all one big thing. Like the behaviors, for instance, let's say follow, or, you know, path, or random, that sort of thing. What else with the enemies? Really, in Venture, the enemies kind of just wander around randomly, I think, and then there's only one type of chasing enemy. This is also going to require the most art, but we'll see about that. And I'm trying to think. If I think of anything else for enemies, I'll put that in here. Then we also need the HUD, so that's just going to keep track of like whether you've been spotted. I'm thinking of putting in that spotted/hidden mechanic. That will be a pretty simple feature, but it's its own thing. It's not really part of the HUD. It's part of like the player and grouped with enemies, but it'll be shown on the HUD. The score, which will also come into play with the player and the items. inventory because I want to show it's not going to be like a kind of standard inventory for a video game. This is just going to be the inventory of treasure you've taken because just in Venture, between levels, it shows the square with all of the things that you've collected. I'm just going to put that in the HUD. And then health, which is also part of the player character. So I guess lives. It's not going to be health. In Venture, if you get touched once, you die. So then you start over from the overworld. But you get 5 tries, and then it goes up when you have enough points. Okay, and then finally the UI. So you generally don't just launch a game and you immediately get into it. That could be a design decision if we want to do that. But for the UI, usually we'll need at least like some buttons. So I've implemented like a base widget before with a button. I've implemented like, usually I do button, label, and image. And then I'll do like buttons are made from images and labels, so you can, or maybe even multiple images. So you could have like the background for the button and maybe a little icon for the button and then the text. So for instance, like the play button would have the background for the button, the little play triangle symbol, and then the text play. Oh, that reminds me of one more thing. Language, yay! And of course, like just other miscellaneous stuff. Audio. If you need audio, you need a way to play the audio. Also not very complicated to make a audio manager. So that's going to be that and just the ability to play it. The ability to adjust volume. Language. Load language files. And change the language. So if you're doing that and adjusting volume, that indicates that we're going to need to be able to save a config. I'm not going to have save games in this game. I'm going to make it so like if you die, it's just game over. But that could be something for like December's project or something. But for config, it's good to have like, okay, save the person's volume for music and sound. Save their language, and like if there's a color blindness setting. So I have not yet, sorry phone call, tested my graphics for color blindness friendliness, but I'll continue doing that as I'm working and double checking and tweaking things because you know, I don't really do like the final thing first. No one does that. And that's kind of one of the shames about game development is you see the final product, but you don't, like, if you're starting out and you're making something kind of rough, then it feels bad because everyone else is so much more polished than you are. You never get to see that, like, kind of rough beginning. So, yeah. So I've unfortunately implemented all this sort of thing a bunch of times before. That's why I've written the Kuko framework, but we're not using that here because I wanted to show kind of everything, all the steps. But in my Kuko framework, this is already implemented and it uses Lua as the markup for building out your UIs. So you just put in a bunch of Lua, I guess tables, objects to say, okay, button, this image, this XY, this width, this text. I have a basic like object class in Kuko. I have map loading in Kuko. I have config stuff already done. I was trying to make it so like you don't have to bother making an option screen with the audio adjustment and language loading options. Like that stuff is just there. I was going to try to make it so you have accessibility tools already built in, so you don't have to like re-roll it every time. So language is in Kuko, obviously managers are in Kuko. And I can show you that if you're interested, but it's a little bit off topic for this. I have it in GitLab. So, Kuko engine. I started this in 2016 to work on the Finn and Kit game. And I really like it, and I still use it for little things here and there, but I haven't finished a game using this. But there's a lot written, and I have doxy documentation files. But I have widgets, I have a text box. This is written with SDL and C++. I have various utilities like to change strings to ints and so on, and figure out what platform you're on. Make nice log files. State, which is just like what we implemented the other day. Scripts, this one uses Lua, so there's a lot of Lua script stuff. So all of this is just functionality that interfaces with these scripts that you would have in your game to specify the config and the languages and all the stuff. Config manager loads and saves configs. Font manager, image manager, input manager to deal with mouse, keyboard, gamepad. Language manager, Lua manager just, loads those scripts, gets everything ready, and then you can query for text values and int values and stuff like that from the Lua files. Map manager, how to load maps and store those maps. Menu manager, which menus are made of UIs. Sound manager, state manager. And entities, so you have your base game object, and then I guess character was anything that has like an animated sprite with it. Map contains tiles, and just the application that initializes SDL. I guess a sprite wrapper for those and rectangles. So those are those. Oh yeah, look at all these issues I have to fix. Okay, so that was breaking out what's needed in the game. I have not gone over how you make your issues yet. So this is, let me go back here. So, also, okay, so another thing with Scrum, this is going really long. I haven't even started programming yet today, but I guess that's good. I guess I'm just talking about how I make the games. So, one of the ideas I like from Scrum is that at the end of every iteration, you should have some working product that would be shippable, even if it's essentially like early access. Like, maybe it's not done in any way, but you have some features working, it builds, it runs, you could give it to somebody. I know with iteration 1, there's going to be that boilerplate coding, and, throwing a character on the screen, having keyboard movement, loading maps, like that's kind of the bare minimum, having sound effects, having music, kind of getting like your basics out there. So iteration 1, I was like, maybe I can do this in a week, just kind of implement all the basics, and then from there you build on. So what would be the nice next feature to have? Well, I don't need to make it so you can move between different maps right away. Maybe it would be good to work on combat next. So then when you're in this one map that you were testing with, there's something to do, and then you can work out that gameplay and make it kind of more fun. So I could have said we're going to work on multi-maps for iteration 2, but that would just be navigating between different maps. It could be boring. We could have made it maps and just items and then did the enemies later. But I thought it'd be nice to kind of iron out the game feel sooner. So combat, and then I guess I have warping between maps, but that would probably be the end of iteration 2 that I do that. So enemies, oh yeah, so okay, I have enemies and maps in here. That might be a little bit much, but we'll see. Oh yeah, also a special effects feature, so that itself would just be like floating number text. Like in Final Fantasy when you hit something and then a number pops off, or really like any game with numbers. Iteration 3 was less of the gameplay stuff itself. Maybe I didn't plan this very well. I feel like I should put the map stuff here. I wanted to make story cutscenes. I forgot to log that too. That will mostly just be drawing and then having some system that goes, this frame, okay, press this to go next, this frame, and so on. Having the menus. The menus can be pretty easy. We can make them as simple as we want, or we can make them more complex. We'll see how much time we have. Testing. Technically, I'll be testing this entire time anyway. But if I find something weird, we'll try to like play through the game. We'll try to fix that, and then we have overflow. So the fourth week of November. I guess there's whoa, 1, 2. Oh no, this is the week. Which week of the year? So we have 4 weeks of November. And I don't like feeling rushed. So I always kind of give myself wiggle room. If something lags behind, that lets me push everything forward. And like in a professional context, like working with Scrum, you would say that your tickets are rolling over, which happens sometimes, and it should be fine. And so really the only deadline here is get the game done by the end of November. I can adjust features to make it a little bit more simple if something's gonna be too long or I don't have enough time. But that's that. So then in here, I went in and I made some issues. That's not the window I wanted. List. New issue. Set a title, add a description, assign it to me. I set up milestones just in here. GitHub also has this, I think. Bitbucket also has this. And then I set up just different categories. Yep. So for this sprint, it is Thursday. I might do some programming tomorrow. I don't know. It depends on how much I like Death Stranding. But, you know, this, if I were estimating these properly, like this might take half the day. I feel like the art's going to be taking the most amount of time, really. Loading in maps, map loading and stuff. Oh, building the maps, that won't take very long. Loading the maps and getting all that worked out, half the day. Just making a generic character player enemy object. If I want to put animations, it'll take a little longer, but not that much longer. I would also say half a day. But, you know, I've never been really good at estimating things, so don't take my word for it. We'll see what I actually do. Audio manager, very easy. 2 seconds. No, a little longer. But yeah, that's all I can think of about my planning process. I'm specifically covering this because somebody had asked me to in the comments. Victor the Van. So hopefully that helps. If you have any additional questions, let me know. Yeah, and you know, I've been talking for 25 minutes about planning, and my video from yesterday was like 45 minutes on just programming, and now I feel like these videos are gonna get very long if I just keep talking. Already tired, and I still haven't done any coding yet. Well, we'll do some sprites next, and then to the coding. This is a intermission, I suppose. I'm going to show you some books I made, because one of my more recent hobbies is making zines and learning about bookbinding. So one of the things I was doing for Christmas presents was buying old VHS tapes from thrift stores and turning them into notebooks. So I bought this right here, right, front and back. I have a bunch of other VHS tapes from 90s and 80s, and then I used some special glue to glue it together. I didn't do a great job here. This is my first attempt. That's why I used this one and not a good one. And then I've also been making zines and mailing them out. This one's not a zine. I don't know what the other one is, but then I bind them. This one's bound with just yarn. And it's basically just a simple sewing the pages together. So usually I'll like print my zines on shiny paper and then bind them and mail them out. This one is for my D&D stuff. I just started playing D&D for the first time, so I like soaked a bunch of paper in tea and then hung it to dry, and of course stuff torn and things, but that makes it more authentic, I guess. So my character's a linguist because I wanted to be a linguist, so I printed out information about the different languages in D&D, and then I also have notes that I scribbled in as my character of like what happened. So we've only did our character building in one gameplay session, but so making books, yay! Okay, end of intermission.